There are moments in life that change everything, turning points where the world as you know it quietly shatters. That Friday night, in the heart of a bustling bar, Thomas experienced his own. Across the dimly lit room, his wife Jessica sat with a radiant smile, one that had once belonged only to him. But tonight, it shimmered with a different light, one born not from affection toward him but from the touch of another man. That man was Alex, a name Thomas barely knew, yet in that instant, he felt as though Alex had become the center of his world. A single moment, a single glance, and suddenly, the ground beneath Thomas felt less steady. Was it an innocent coincidence, or was it something far more deliberate? The hum of conversation, the flirtatious exchanges, the rhythmic clinking of glasses, all of it blurred into nothingness. Thomas sat frozen, his gaze locked onto Jessica. She was laughing, her voice carrying effortlessly through the crowded space, but something about it was unfamiliar. There was a new melody in her laughter, a note he had never heard before. And then he saw it, Alex's arm draped casually along the back of her chair. But it wasn't casual, not to Thomas. The way Jessica leaned in, the way her fingers lingered just a moment too long against Alex's arm, sent a slow, burning ache through his chest. He tried to reason with himself. Jessica has always been social. He clung to the thought as if it could anchor him, but the gnawing unease in his stomach wouldn't fade. His untouched drink sat before him, the condensation beating on the glass as he traced the rim with a restless finger. Every second that passed, every flicker of connection between Jessica and Alex, wound the tension inside him tighter. A firm hand landed on his shoulder, grounding him for the first time that night. He turned to find Chris, an old friend, standing beside him. Chris's eyes flickered between Thomas and the scene unfolding across the bar, his expression darkening. "This doesn't look good, man," Chris muttered. Thomas didn't respond. What could he say? That his wife was humiliating him in front of a room full of people? That she was acting as if he didn't even exist? The words formed in his mind but refused to leave his throat, suffocating him in silence. The weight of the moment pressed down on him, growing heavier with every second, every glance, every whisper between Jessica and Alex. And then, he couldn't take it anymore. Pushing back his chair, he stood abruptly. A part of him screamed to sit back down, to let it go, but another part, one that refused to be ignored, demanded answers. He moved toward her, his steps slow but deliberate. "Jessica!" His voice was quiet, but there was no mistaking the steel beneath it. She looked up, startled for a moment, but quickly masked it with the same smile that had once been his world. "Oh hey, sweetheart," she greeted, her tone effortlessly bright. "You remember Alex, don't you?" Thomas didn't remember Alex. More importantly, he didn't want to. And the smirk on Alex's face only deepened the pit in his stomach. "We need to talk," Thomas said, his voice colder now. Jessica hesitated, her eyes flickering toward Alex before she responded. "We're just... now." His interruption was quiet but firm. Jessica exhaled sharply, murmured something to Alex, then followed Thomas to a quieter corner of the bar. Her arms crossed over her chest, her stance defensive. "What is it?" she asked, as though he were the one being unreasonable. Thomas studied her for a long moment before speaking. "What are you doing?" His voice was steady, but the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. "You're humiliating me in front of everyone." Jessica narrowed her eyes. "You're overreacting," she said dismissively. "We're just having a good time. Alex is a friend." Thomas's jaw tightened. "A friend?" His voice sharpened. "Does a friend put his hand on your shoulder like that? Whisper in your ear? Do you laugh with a friend like that?" Jessica rolled her eyes. "You're being ridiculous," she scoffed. "Do you always have to be so paranoid?" That single, dismissive gesture was the last straw. "Paranoid?" His voice rose, frustration breaking through. "If this is how things are going to be, maybe you should." But he couldn't finish the sentence. The anger had drained the words from him, leaving only raw pain. Jessica didn't respond right away. And then, with an indifferent shrug, she turned away. "If you're so uncomfortable, maybe you should leave," she said, her tone infuriatingly casual. "I'm having fun." And just like that, she walked back to Alex, slipping into her seat as if nothing had happened. Thomas stood there, his world unraveling in silence. Stepping outside, the night air hit him like a wave, cool and sharp against the heat burning inside him. The muffled sounds of laughter and music remained behind a closed door, but in his head, the chaos only grew louder. Jessica's voice. Her touch. Her laughter with him. The images replayed on a relentless loop. His hands curled into fists at his sides as he tried to steady his breathing, but every inhale only fanned the fire inside him. Then his phone buzzed. A message from Jessica. Are you okay? You know I love you, right? Thomas stared at the screen for a long moment before shutting off his phone with a bitter smile. Is this what love is supposed to look like? That night, he sat alone in the dark, the weight of her betrayal pressing down on him. He thought about the laughter that had once filled their life with warmth, how it now felt like a blade twisting deeper into his chest. He wondered what Jessica had whispered to Alex before following him to the corner of the bar. But even the thought of it sent fresh pain crashing over him. By the time morning arrived, his anger had settled, but it hadn't disappeared. It simmered beneath the surface, waiting. When Jessica finally returned home, still in the same clothes from the night before, her hair slightly disheveled, she stepped inside as if nothing had changed. "Good morning," she said casually. Thomas just watched her, saying nothing. The silence stretched thick between them. And then, something inside him snapped. This can't go on. His voice was calm, but there was no mistaking the finality in it. Jessica hesitated. "What is there to talk about?" she asked, staring into her coffee. "I was just spending time with a friend." Thomas exhaled slowly, setting his cup down. "Stop lying to me," he said, his voice firm. "I already know what's going on." Jessica's face paled. "What do you mean?" she asked, but the tremble in her voice betrayed her. Thomas reached into his pocket and placed an envelope on the table. Jessica hesitated before picking it up. Inside were photos, text messages, hotel receipts. Proof. Her breath hitched. "Thomas, What are you going to say?" His voice was laced with restrained fury. "That it was a mistake. That it didn't mean anything? Nothing you say will change this." Tears welled in her eyes. "I never wanted this to happen," she whispered. Thomas shook his head. "If you loved me," he said quietly, "you wouldn't have done this." Jessica wiped away a tear. "What do you want me to do?" "I want you to leave." For the first time in a long time, he felt peace. Whether Jessica would change, he didn't know. But one thing was certain, he had reclaimed his self-respect. And that was worth more than anything.